Hi guys, welcome to The Trade, episode 63. I will be your solo host this round as well. My name's Melanie. Welcome. Today we are interviewing Bret Juliano. I am shit at saying names. Yay! Yes, once again, I prove that I am shit at saying names. Thank you for joining me, Bret.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bret does a comic strip called Dust Bunny Mafia, and he's going to join us today, talk a little bit about himself, a little bit about his comic, plus the anthology he's in right now. So, Bret, take it away.
Thank you. So I do a comic called Dust Bunny Mafia, and I pitch it as it's Looney Tunes meets The Godfather. So you've got four mobster families, dust bunnies, rats, crows, and bugs, all trying to take control of the criminal enterprise of the city while simultaneously evading cops, which is, the whole point. Uh, and I've been doing it for about 6 years now. I have 600 strips in the archive and working on expanding. Uh, got a book now out and working on some other things to help expand the world outside of just the webcomic realm.
Very nice, very nice. So, what got you started on Dust Bunny?
Um, well, I've always had the inclination to draw. Um, Years ago, I wanted to be an animator for Disney, like a lot of kids growing up. But then the uh, business sense of my parents kind of led me into away from a career in the arts and more into the practical, more well compensated computer side of uh, the world. So I kind of just kept drawing as a hobby, but didn't pursue anything real um, in that sense until I got out of college. In which I was like, okay, I have a job, I have a day job, I'm doing that. Now I can start actually pursuing my hobby. In which I was building websites and said, hey, I know everything I need to put up a website. Now I can start a comic. Um, And surprisingly, the name Dust Bunny Mafia came to me when I was sitting in traffic in LA on a Friday afternoon, where I saw a license plate that said DBM in front of me. And since I had like an hour and a half to go on my drive, I was like, DBM, what's, an acronym for what? And I thought of Dust Bunny Mafia immediately, jotted that down real quick. And then when I went home, I sketched out my first character, which then built into six characters of the original family, and then spiraled out from there.
That is a big long commute.
Yeah, but
Oy. I thought my commute was long. I do about a 40-minute commute, but I don't have like heavy traffic or anything between me and there. It's actually distance.
Yeah, I was
So,
at the time I was working in LA in downtown and living in basically like 30 miles away, 35 miles away, and coming out of the major cities, LA, Friday afternoon. That was before I learned how to take side streets and was like, you know what? It's 5 o'clock. No one's going anywhere. I'm just gonna stay down here. That happened later.
there you go. Work the system, right? Are you still in LA?
I am not. I actually relocated to Chicago coming up on 2 years ago. Um, my wife had the opportunity to um, pursue her master's degree, and it was a great opportunity for that. And so, since we didn't have any real ties holding us down other than friends and some family, we decided to uproot and move to Chicago for the foreseeable future. Um, so I'm now out here living among the great mobsters of the day.
So, with comics, I mean, how did you get started into them?
Into comics?
Hmm.
I was always reading them as a kid. I used to grow up reading the Sunday morning paper that had the fold out comics, like 4-page spread. Um, when I got a little older, I would try and read the weekly newspaper comics before I went to school. I'd get up early enough, get ready, and then instead of, other people like watching TV, I went and grabbed the paper so I could read the comics before school. Um, so I'd always been interested in, you know, comics, usually the uh, Sunday morning or like the ongoing comics, Garfield, Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, the classics. Um, and then as I got older, I got into um, like Sonic the Hedgehog comics, actually going to a comic book store, and then proceeded into in high school and stuff, getting into more mainstream X-Men, Spider-Man, DC, etc. Um, and then being uh, a uh, artistic person, I um, was always drawing, and so I kind of just was like, hey, if I want to make a comic strip, I can do it. I'll just figure out a way. And so when I got that idea for Dust Bunny Mafia, I just started rolling with it. I went home, started sketching out ideas for the characters, creating structure. So I had, I knew I was wanting to do a mafia family. So you've got the boss, you've got the consigliere, his right hand man, you've got the underboss, you've got the lawyer, you've got the enforcer, you need a bookie. So I was like, all right, here are the 6 main characters right there. Then I kind of spun into that from there, just kind of went uh, into doing strips and knew that I wanted to do uh, both gag-a-day strips, like, Garfield's known for. But then I also wanted bigger plot points, and so I wanted to uh, not be limited to just having my characters stay the same year round and not having any growth or real emotional ties to it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to have bigger story arcs. I'm going to do plot development. I'm going to do world building. I'm going to introduce other characters and families and conflict. And so I was like, and since I'm not limited, I'm not constricted by being with a publisher or anything, I can do what I want with it. So I did.
Very nice. So no gatekeepers actually helped you out.
Yes. I mean, I haven't yet to be signed, or I don't even know if I'm looking for that really. But I actually am happier probably that I'm not like restricted in that sense.
Do you think do you recommend anybody trying to look into getting signed by like one of the syndicates or a bigger publisher?
I say for now, be good at what you do with your own stories. And if you show passion and your desire for your own character, naturally people will see that, whether it's today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If you're doing what you want to do and showing your passion, growth, skill, and all those things, I think naturally um, people have a better chance at seeing that rather than just going to being, Joe Schmo over here being like, I want to shoot for Marvel. I want to work for DC or Image without having any credit to their name, any
Background?
any background, or like here's a list of the things that I've done. I think you'll be better off in the long run if you want to go for that to have your own repertoire built up.
See, I've always seen pros and cons of going with anybody versus going on your own. I mean, you're going to learn either way. You're going to be a better person from learning and doing. I found people, if they do like anthologies, if they do their own projects and push themselves and learn the hard way that way, they have an easier time if they want to then go to a publisher or,
Yeah.
a syndicate of some sort. Uh, I have also found that a lot of people find personal gain more out of just being independent. I mean, it really just depends upon what type of projects you want to work on in the long run. And that's, pros and cons that you got to work out for yourself. Um, I sat down and really did a pros and cons list a long time ago, and I found I just did not like the way the bigger publishers overall, at least then, were treating people, were treating their creators. And I wanted to maintain my independence and my say over all of what I'm doing.
Oh, I completely agree. And I mean, I living in California, and then when I went down to LA for school, I was really close to Disney Studios. And I used to attend local comic conventions and different designer uh, toy fairs and such. And when I was talking with some of the other artists who had worked with Disney or were working for Disney, they're like, it's not all it's cracked up to be, especially if you have your own intellectual property. They can, you know, the whole thing about they own all the technology that you work on. So if
Mm-hmm.
you happen to, open a file that had one of your personal characters or something, they could reach in and be like, oh, you worked on this on our computers, therefore
Mm-hmm.
this is ours. And
Yeah.
I don't know how big or they would go with that or how far, but I know that Disney's had pretty deep pockets, um, and so like that was enough for me to be like, okay, yep, don't want to do that. I'd rather do my own thing and just go with it from there.
And see, I've never been against anybody wanting to work for the big guys, but understand you're working on their projects. They own it all and they have all the say in it. So, if you're okay with that, if that's what you want, you don't want to be that side of the creative spectrum, that's okay. I always want to put that out there that if you want to work on, uh, Scooby Doo, on Mickey Mouse, on whoever owns that creative property, and that's because you really love that character and the company. Go for it. Just understand you don't get the last say in anything.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, there's nothing, there's no property out there right now that I'm like, oh, I would love to work on X, Y, and Z. But if there was a time when I wanted to, you know, I might go for it. I'm not, but to each their own. So, and I
Yeah.
mean, those places have to have people, the dedicated artists, letterers, pencilers, etc., to work on those properties, or they'll fail. Like they
Yeah.
just have to have people to continually work on them. So,
I'm never against anybody doing that, but I found almost every creative I've ever known, ever talked to, ever met, ever hung out with at all, almost always has their own stories that they want to tell overall, even if they're not a very good writer, but maybe they're a very good artist or vice versa. They're a very good writer, but not so much the artist. They
yeah,
always still have their own stuff they want to say and work on and do. So, I tell people make certain to do limited contracts or, something like that, and make certain to keep your work as separate as possible. And.
yeah, that's good advice.
But anyways, so I know you've got Bunny Mafia, and I also know you've got an anthology that's out on Kickstarter right now.
Correct. I have. Um, I'm a part of a Chicago-based comic meetup, and we each have our own properties that we're working on. But each year we come up with a collective anthology, which we publish, and we put it on a Kickstarter. This year's theme was called Out of the Deep, and a lot of the stories are marine, subterranean type stories, but people were uh, able to do what they wish with that theme, um, in which so it's a short story anthology. People can submit between 2 and 5 stories, sorry, 2 and 5 page stories, um, and they're all interesting comic, short stories. Some of them are one-offs where they're just for this anthology. Some of them tie into the creator's other works. For instance, I have a Dust Bunny Mafia short story, in this one, in which one of my traitorous dust bunnies gets thrown, basically tried to be killed, gets thrown underwater to sleep with fishes, and then meets a whole underground criminal enterprise that he didn't know existed. And currently, it's a great anthology. I really think that it's definitely worth checking out. It will be running for a couple more days, I believe, when this goes live. And yeah.
I'll have links for everything for everybody down in the doobly-doo, just so if you guys want to check it out. What are the links to Dust Bunny Mafia? Can you throw those out there for everybody?
Sure. So my primary site is comics.dustbunnymafia.com. That's kind of the mecca of where you'll find me, and it has links to everything from where to get on my mailing list to my Amazon store where my first book is, as well as my social media links. You can find me at Twitter and Facebook at Dust Bunny Mafia. Just search there, you'll find me. I'm on Instagram, but someone stole Dust Bunny Mafia before I got a chance to. And so I'm Dust Bunny Ma, M-A-H, Fia. So, but search Dust Bunny Mafia if you can fit, and it'll show up. And then I've got a store at dustbunnymafia.bigcartel.com, which has some mugs, some buttons, stickers, and the last year's anthology that I was a part of.
Very nice, very nice. Do you recommend like some of these newer creators that are coming out to maybe get on some anthologies to get some experience out there, since they're such short, usually 2 to 5 page on average is usually what I see most anthologies do, just to basically work out the kinks in their creative processes?
Oh yeah, I'm a big proponent of anthologies. One of the first ones I was involved in was spearheaded by Heather Antos, who used this pitch. She came out with the Unlawful Good anthology, and it came out in 2014, I want to say. It was kickstarted, and it was short story anthology about crime, and people could take that idea and use it to whatever means they wanted to. And so in the end, I think there were about 80 artists, writers, editors, letterers, etc., involved in the project. And at the time, I was not as familiar with doing a long form comic. I was doing gag-a-day and was doing my serial type strips. And so I actually bargained with her to let me do some fake advertisements like you used to see in old comic books, except I wanted to do it with my dust bunnies promoting criminal activities, since it was an anthology about crime.
Right.
And so although I didn't have a story in that anthology, I did have 3 pin-up fake advertisements, which was great exposure. And it also led to me meeting a whole host of other slew of comic artists, and gave me some great friends that I still have, almost 5 years later, that I'm, still working with to this day about and bouncing ideas off of. So you never know what doors that can open or who you'll meet. I mean, Heather ended up using this project as a pitch to Marvel, and now she's an assistant editor on the Deadpool and Star Wars lines.
Oh yeah. See, that's what I found with doing even your own independent creative projects. It can open a lot more doors than a lot of people realize. Last podcast I did with Kelly Bastow, we were talking about the fact that she had done a little short story about just some very personal issues that happened and popped up, and she just got it down in comics form. Comics can be a lot of a therapy in a way too.
Yeah.
And she put that out there, and it landed her 2 book deals so far. She's been the artist on.
Yeah. It's amazing what can happen. And you never know who you'll meet either from, you know,
Oh yeah,
those.
networking. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And something like this, I've noticed the more I'm doing this, that I'm getting introduced to people even unconsciously. Like I'm, going to a show because someone told me about this, and then a friend is introducing me to someone who worked on Donald Duck for years and Scrooge McDuck and all these DuckTales things. I'm like, oh, that's pretty impressive considering.
That is that is pretty cool.
So
And it's fun to hang out with some of the older creators as well as the newer ones. I mean, I found some older creators resist the newer technology, because they're just not familiar with it. And I
yeah,
get that. But I've been teaching some of the older ones that I've met how to actually use Skype and Facebook, and getting them out there again. And it's actually been a fun experience. And then they, kind of give me some art tips and stuff back and whatnot. It's been a fun exchange. But anyways, so let's say you were brand new at doing this. You've been doing this for about 6 years now. So let's say you were brand new. What advice would you give to somebody doing brand new stuff?
um, lead with your heart. I mean, uh, just kind of go with it, put it out there, and you know, the only way you're going to get better and get anywhere in this world, especially with your comics, is to put something out there, invest time in improving it. Um, so whether you want to do a web comic, whether you want to work for Marvel and DC, or you know whether you want to do anything in that realm, I'd say get something out there, get it on paper, then start putting it online and get people interested. One of the creators in the comic anthology is actually a he's a high school student that has been coming to the meetups, and he's been putting out his comic. He does a comic called Shark Man, and he actually put it. He's done 4 issues now of trade paperback. Or sorry, not trade paperback. He has 4 floppies now
Mm.
of his comic, and he actually just finished a Kickstarter to print the 4th edition, and he's still in high school, and he's already you know been in at least the past 2 anthologies with the collective, has his own property that he's working on, and so I mean you can start anywhere. Just get out, start something, and start meeting people. And
I had somebody really poo-pooing me lately about the fact that I've been doing comics on and off, but I've always had a day job right now, just, maintaining things because, it's the world. You've got to pay for things. And right now, my comics and my art aren't necessarily paying all the bills yet. That's okay. And so I maintain a day job and then do all my creative stuff on the side on the weekends, in my free time. And they were really giving me, well, a load of horse shit about it, saying, well, you're not getting anywhere. Why aren't you trying harder? And I'm like, well, my investment in time apparently shouldn't be with you either.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of naysayers in the world, and I was recently listening to a podcast with Brad Geiger, who
Mm,
does um,
Evil Inc.
yes, that, and he was I'm going to space the name of the podcast, but it's with him and Dave Kellett of Drive and Sheldon Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were talking about um, the myth or the phrase of, oh, you work a day job, so you're not a real comic artists, and they just blew that out of the water, that myth and that stigma around, having a day job. I'm a computer programmer, and you know, I work my 9 to 5, and on my lunch breaks and evenings, weekends, I do my comics. And I mean,
Mhm.
that's just, you know, I think the biggest hurdle for me was in my head of hearing that, oh, you're not making money enough to pay the bills with your art, so you're not a real artist. But when I was going to conventions, just attending and then like talking with the other artists and showing them, sketches, my comic and different things, they're like, you need to apply for pro passes, apply for, you know, these different things. Why not do a table? You've got 500 strips. You should do a book with it. And I'm like, the biggest encouragement was the rest of the comic world and not the, you know, uh,
Excuse me.
it's okay, not the outliers that were the naysayers.
I found that as much as we get these negative people in our lives, even family and friends, sometimes you need to cut them out, or at least give less of your time to them if they're going to be that much of a naysayer.
Oh, of
Um,
course.
it's one of those things of I've been reading and rereading one of my favorite books lately. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And basically, the author talks more or less about your use of time and investment. You know, what are you investing in? What problems do that bring up? Do you want to take those problems on? You know, the
Yeah.
only difference, one of his big examples he said on there, is the only difference between you and Warren Buffett is Warren Buffett has better problems.
And bigger problems. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just a different set of problems with different set of circumstances. But he took that on, because that's
Yeah.
what he wanted to do. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna invest less time in these negative people. It doesn't mean I'm not hearing what they're saying. You know, it's not like I'm turning my ears off, but I'm going, okay, wait a minute. You believe my investment of time, energy, creativity isn't worth it. Okay, that's your opinion. I've heard it. I'm not going to take it on otherwise. Thank you for your opinion. I'm going to move on now because apparently now my time needs to be invested elsewhere. You know, um, I don't talk to a lot of my family anymore because a lot of them were very much and are still very much like that. So I've pretty much stopped talking to them because you know what? If you want to be negative, I've heard what you said. You've repeated yourself several times. Okay, moving on. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
uh, yeah, do
that's
what you need to do.
yeah. I mean, that's exactly. Uh, there's only so much weight you should give to people, you know, with the negativity and, uh, you know, honestly, it's better off for you and for your mental health to be, surrounding yourself with good and positive people in however that means, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's online, you know, people that support what you do, and build you up. So,
Yeah, the block button on Twitter and Facebook is a fantastic tool. Uh, you know, it's okay to listen to the negativity because you can get positive results out of that. I like using negative energy. Somebody wants to throw hate at me saying, you know what? This is, my anatomy was off on this painting I did. Okay, thank you for the feedback. You think I'm shit because my anatomy was off on that painting. That's okay. Thank you for your feedback. I'm going to cut you out now and I'm going to go work on my anatomy. You know?
yeah, I mean, there's always ways to take positive things out of negative situations.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not against having that negativity thrown out there because we do need that balance. But it's when they become so super hateful that, there's nothing positive elsewhere coming out, that's when you go ahead and do the block button. That's when we go ahead and say, okay, my time is going to be used elsewhere now. Bye. You know, uh, doesn't mean I still don't love some people, you know? I've got several people I love dearly, but that does not mean I have to take on your shit otherwise.
So true.
You know? So, you know, I found comics and writing is a hard road to go to begin with. You know, yes, you're not going to see results sometimes for years, but that's okay too. How did, you know, things get built by a single person? It took them years, you know? There was a really great sculptor. He had a big, large plot of property. Nobody believed in his sculpture work. Took him 40 years, and he used that piece of property, and he sculpted this great rock garden. It's beautiful. It's got some of his best work in it. But it took him 40 years of making that, with everybody shitting on him the whole time.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
it's just do what you love. I found that if you don't do what you love, what else are you going to do? What's worth it then?
what is that quote about, you know, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life?
Yep, it's true. It's true. And, you know, I had somebody say, oh, well, I've been in this big, big art block lately. And I'm like, okay, well, what all is it that you need to accomplish? And, you know, make yourself a list. So she sat down and made a list. And I'm like, okay, now take that first piece and break it down into smaller pieces. You know, that first task. And her first task was she needed to redo her website. She hadn't touched it in about a couple of years, so it needed new banners and things like that. And I'm like, okay, only do one thing on that website. Make one new banner. Just one. Just one. And I heard from her about 3 days later, she had just finished redoing the whole website. You know, it's, you get the ball rolling and it'll keep rolling. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult as hell because there's gravel in the way and it's stopping your boulder and all that jazz. But if you have enough tears, you can actually buoy the boulder a little bit too.
Oh yeah, I mean, like they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you need to casually chip away at the bigger problems in order to attack them successfully.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I try to throw this out there to several creators. And I'm always giving myself this advice as well, because it never hurts to even remind yourself, you know, make yourself a list of what you need to do and just give yourself one tiny, tiny piece out of that whole thing to do that day. And then go get the rest of your errands done. Go to your day job. Go to, you know,
Yeah.
go do whatever else you need to do. Take care of yourself. You know, of course, self-care is always very, very important. I very much, you know, take your meds, make certain you've eaten that day, take a nap. You know, napping and sandwiches are the best.
Yes, I'll agree with that.
But, you know, I found you can't conquer anything if you're sick, you're tired, you're, you know, just burnt out. Give yourself a break too, you know. That list isn't going to go away. And you don't have to let it go unless you want to let it go.
Yeah.
And if you want to let it go, okay, then what's that new set of problems you're now going to conquer?
Yeah, I mean, this weekend I had the ability to, I basically had the whole weekend free, and which was a rarity. Um, and I had a whole list of creative things and other housework that I wanted, you know, to get done. But on my creative things, I was like, all right, I'm going to go downtown. I'm going to go find a little coffee shop that I've been hearing good things about. And I went down there and I was like, all right, I'm going to work on these creative things. And I had my list. And then a friend of mine posted this great picture on Facebook, some meme about Pop Goes the Weasel. And I was like, hey, I can use that. I have a weasel in my strip. And I ran with it. And I spent like 2 hours working on this elaborate strip that'll go up this week. using that joke, but that wouldn't have happened if I didn't, you know, take the time to go downtown, find a coffee shop, relax, and just kind of enjoy myself and doing something that breaking up the routine and, something I don't get to do all the time because of my day job and other responsibilities. So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See, yeah, breaking up the routine helps. Also just having an established routine I've also found helps a lot too. Several creative people I know work several small part-time jobs and do what you got to do to pay your bills first and take care of yourself first. Can't make anything if you don't have the roof over your head and at least some food on your plate.
true.
But you'll always have at least an hour here, hour there. You can put a little something into. At my day job myself, I can't quite do any strip work or anything, but you know what? I can at least jot some ideas down. I can get a little bit of story structure written. But I also always found that I can do t-shirt designs, at least the basic simple doodle start of that on my lunch break and on my 15-minute breaks around things or right before I'm starting my shift. It's just kind of one of those, I get in that business mindset, and for some reason that always triggers those
Yep.
type of thoughts and issues and pops it up. And well, I always keep a notebook with me
Oh no,
everywhere.
I. It's funny that you say that because I was thinking about the same thing. I've got this little moleskin that was actually given to me by my workplace before I started, and in here I have a whole bunch of different things. Like this is con ideas that I get at random times, and I have this notebook with me everywhere I go. So I have my notebook and my sketchbook, two things I have everywhere. And I mean, that's what I do. I have everything from t-shirt designs that I want to do for my comics and for my bigger mobster brand down the road to ideas for conventions to people that I want featured in my next book, things like that. I've got it all in my trusty notebook. So,
Yeah, I found that's one of the harder things some creative friends of mine talk about is, well, I'll think of something, but I'm at work. And I'm like, oh, don't you have your notebook in your back pocket?
yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, between customers, you could just take a second, write it down, close the notebook, put it back away. I mean, just,
Yeah.
you're not stealing time. You're waiting for your next customer anyway. So write it down, just get it out of your head so you don't forget it and keep going. I hit the dollar store all the time, especially right around school when school starts, in August there. And I can always get a stack of decent notebooks for cheap.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea to always have something around, whether it's a notebook, a sketchbook, you know, some way to get those ideas transferred because you never know when those ideas are going to hit you.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah, see, my favorite types of notebooks are these little Canson ones you can get. They're a multimedia one. I've usually found them a lot of times at Walmart, but you can also find them several other places too. But the nice thing about the multimedia is you can literally put anything in them. I mean, I've got some paintings in here I've done on lunch breaks and stuff. Then I'll next page over do some little autobio comics or I've got a list of shit I need to get done that day.
yeah,
I don't keep two separate notebooks because I found it just gets jumbled. So I just keep the one and just doodle the shit out of it. It's got my work schedule in it, and then the next page will have. And then I just put little sticky note tabs, keeping things separate. But that's me. Everybody's got a different system. I've had several people trying the bullet journal style,
yep.
and that's very cool. But I don't have enough time to invest in doing the bullet journal.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me. But that's okay. You got to try. You got to try different things too. I tried doing the bullet journal for about a year, and I found I was investing so much time in just making the damn journal instead of writing and making comics and making podcasts and editing and whatnot, that I was like, yeah, I don't think this will work. This is fun. This is, a good little creative exercise. But yeah, I think we'll just go back to my other method of, yes, a scribbly, scrabbly notebook.
Yeah, I mean, everyone works differently. And so for me, I'm pretty linear organized. And so, I need to keep the separation. But like in the notebook, I do have like, t-shirt ideas. And so sometimes I will have, a bit of a sketch on it for what I want, or I'll have some icons or, little tiny doodles, but for the actual, just enough to get the idea, the imagery down that I want. And then I'll transfer to my sketchbook to actually show the more
flesh out
drawing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always hearing people talking about the fact that they can't fill a sketchbook, and I'm like, well, then stop treating it like a sketchbook.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having that much of a problem filling a sketchbook, excuse me, guys, stop treating it like a sketchbook. Treat it like a all-around notebook. Tear pictures out of magazines and newspapers, glue them in there. Paint on the other pages. I mean, just
yeah. I mean, who says that you have to fill it in 6 months, a year? Like I've been carrying around my sketchbook, which is on the other side of the room right now, but it's a nice heavy duty one. And I only have maybe a quarter of it filled right now. And I've been doing more note taking than actual sketching out strips. So that's kind of been put aside until, the ideas come and the sketches, I need to flesh those out again. And I'm sure I'll, transition back to using it at some point more regularly. But until that time comes, I'll just work with what I've got. And then eventually I'll fill it and I'll buy another one. But I don't think I'm going to fill it this next year unless something, completely flips in my creative process. But that's okay. As long as it's still together,
Yeah, definitely. I like filling it out, and I like having all these different scraps and notes in it. Again, that's my style. I like it a little sloppier. I fill about when I first started, it took me about a year to fill one book, and right now I've been filling about 3 a year.
Wow.
But it's of these little ones. Like I said, these are pretty small and portable. I think this is a 5x9, I do believe. So it's fairly easy to keep handy, or even put in a small bag, my lunch bag, and I take with me when I go to work, I've got a little there's little water brushes, so it's got little water reservoir in the handle. I take like 1 or 2 of those, and I take 2 tubes of paint, acrylic paint, and I just take that with me. And on my lunch break, whatever I've been doodling, I'll just go ahead and paint it, just because it feels good to make something.
Yeah.
But it keeps the day flowing. It keeps me making stuff. And then at the end of the day, I've got 4 or 5 things I've made, even if they're not the best. It doesn't need to be the best. This is your sketchbook anyways. This is just the idea section. This is not the final product.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's amazing what you can get done, in 15 minutes, or in, while you're waiting between customers, to be able to jot something down, whether it's an idea that will flesh out into a comic, or, here's the dialogue for a 3-panel strip that I can get done. Or, if I have 20 minutes left on my lunch break, I'll try and sometimes I've been using my time recently to send out an email newsletter, and I'm trying to be more proactive, because in the past I've sent out like once a month, and I'll do this gigantic post that I spend hours doing and having all these photos and different things. And I'm like, I want short, actionable things this year. And so I'm working on having once a week, if I can do it, or once every 2 weeks, send out a quick email blast that is, hey, here's one topic, here's concise, here's something, a couple weeks ago I was featured on another podcast, and here's, some of the things we talked about. Here's a script that came out as a result of it, and here's the link on how you can download it or listen. And it's quick. Here's 15 minutes, throw in a picture or two, done. But it's getting something done.
Yeah, I found as creative people, we just have to manage our time better. And I also found as creative people, we don't talk about money matters as much. And, money to a lot of creative people in general is very elusive to them. At least I found it's very ambiguous. And I'm like, no, actually, it's pretty linear. You make something, you put it out there, then you can make product off of that, and the money comes.
Yeah, but
pretty simple.
Well, it's simple in theory, but there's a lot of complicated parts in getting, the product made, getting the strips or comic made, and then also getting people to actually see your work and then getting them to convert. I mean, it's linear. I agree with that. But at the same time, you can't just put something out there and be like, it's there. Everyone come by and spend $20 of my hard-earned paycheck, or,
Right. But at the same time, if you're not investing in it to begin with, how are you going to get that back, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree.
There are steps to it. It's just, you have to invest in it. I think that's the biggest thing is you have to invest in it. You have to believe in it, and I found that's also a mental hiccup as much as anything. Everybody seems to have this general, I don't know, idea that art is free. No, we put it out there to share for free, but then you usually want like a t-shirt or a sticker, or you want the floppy, or you even want the graphic novel, good, nice, big collection. And that's where that buildup comes from, I think we have an easier time now than several of our predecessors did even 10, 15 years ago, of getting product made.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we just need to utilize what we've got now better.
Yeah. And I mean, there are things, Patreon, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, actually being able to go to conventions and using things like CreateSpace from Amazon to be able to self-publish your book, or using that in conjunction with the Kickstarter in order to get 500 copies and then get it in the hands of people, as well as then you can take that to a show, whether it's at a library, whether it's C2E2 or New York Comic Con, and be able to get that into the hands of people.
Let me ask you something. Do you think cons are dying out? Because that's one of the things we've had a debate on back and forth here on the podcast.
I think it's going to be harder and harder to make money that you used to be able to make 10 years ago at a con today. Just because with the proliferation of people selling online, running Kickstarters, running Patreon campaigns, and being able to cut out the middleman of the convention, and with the advent of social media, that it's going to be harder and harder to turn your profit. But I don't think it's going to go away completely and die, because people are always going to want to interact with things that are outside of their realm. So being able to meet your, comic book hero, the artist, being able to meet Stan Lee, being able to, bridge that gap that in your ordinary life you're not going to run into, seeing these people, getting to chat with them, getting to show your work, or, being able to get the latest Deadpool sketch kind of thing. I think there's always going to be a need for people to interact in person. And so, but as the idea of making a profit the same way that you used to with cons, I don't think is going to continue. Um, but for me personally, I'm just starting out getting into conventions. I started going last year and actually selling. And, you know, I'm going to do it because that's the best way for me outside of Twitter and Facebook to kind of promote my work and try and get people in a more geographic centered area to see my work. And so, but I'm not doing it to try and pay bills. I'm doing it as a hobby. And so, to each their own, I suppose.
Do you ever want to switch over from having the day job to being able to do like Bunny and the like full time?
I don't know. I don't want my art to be a burden. And so if it came to the point where I was trying to support a family just on the comics or the property of that, um, I would feel more obligated to uh, always do a day job in that sense. And so, but interestingly enough, a coworker of mine a couple of weeks ago asked me if I was to win the lottery per se, and $20 million, and I was set for life and had you know kids' colleges were paid off and things like that, maybe. But I would
Right.
never want to use my passion project and my hobby to actually become a burden of or a source of conflict within needing it to pay the bills.
Interesting. I like that though. Excuse me. All right. Well, overall, this has been kind of fun. I haven't had somebody else's perspective that didn't mind having the day job, because me, personally, I've always had a day job. I've never been able to do art and comics full time. I've gotten quite a bit of money out of doing work like that, but it's not been steady enough and whatnot to be able to just quit day jobs altogether and be able to do that type of work, that creative work all the time. I don't know if I could. I get a little bit of stability out of having that day job paycheck. I don't know. I'm a little intimidated by giving that up, that steadiness up, to then pursue the art full time. I'm not against it. I just don't know if I could. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, one of my friends, Nick Selleck, he does the Awkward Yeti and the Heart and Brain comic.
Hmm.
Um, I was reading an interview from him, and he was a corporate graphic designer for like 9 years before his Awkward Yeti strip started, and then he spun off into the Heart and Brain comic, which now has millions and billions of followers, and he's subsequently quit his day job and has 3 books out with the comic. He has a couple book deal with Scholastic to do some science based illustrations, um, as well as 2 or 3 successful Kickstarters, and the list goes on. And I mean, but now he's doing his comics full time. If I got to that level, okay, that may be something more enticing. But until that day comes, I'll stick with my day job and use my free time for my dust bunnies.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it would probably have to build to some type of level like that in order for me to quit too, where I have enough coming in, enough savings that I could just go ahead and pursue that, and that way I have a cushion.
Yep.
And I've been listening to several entrepreneur podcasts doing pretty much the same idea, but they're more freelancers and the like. But still, the same idea. Again, it's enticing, but I don't know if I could.
Yeah, I feel it'd be very hard to make that jump without having the plan or having different things set in place to know that you can provide, that you can live for 6 to 12 months on before you get the momentum, things like that. So
Yeah, it's scary. It really is. It is. It's a fear. But I think in general, we're kind of in fearful times to begin with. So there's a balance there, as always. So, it's just walking that tightrope of the what ifs.
yep.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me, Bret. I appreciate it. And guys, again, links down in the doobly-doo, comics.dustbunnymafia.com. Check out his work. It's fantastic. Over 600 strips. Come on. That's plenty of reading there. Plus, he's got a book out on Amazon. You can go find it. Just put in Dust Bunny Mafia. It'll pop up. Thank you so much, Bret. We hope to see you again. You're always welcome on,
Thank you. Yeah, let's set something up for the future.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Guys, that was episode 63. Hope to see you again next month. Bye.